Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at a really interesting article by Imad Lodi. And the title is Sales is Simple. It's about understanding and addressing needs. I thought that was kind of provocative. So I wanted to bring in an expert to talk about this with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, is it really that simple? Is sales really as simple as understanding and addressing needs?
Lodi makes a really interesting point. He says that at the very core, sales really is about addressing needs.
Mm.
But he says you have to go deeper, deeper than just what the customer says they need.
Okay, so what does that actually mean?
Well, he talks about the difference between what he calls considered needs and unconsidered needs.
Okay.
So a considered need is something that the client already knows they have. It's a problem that they're aware of, and they're actively looking for a solution. Like, if you can't keep track of your tasks and deadlines, you might realize, okay, I need some kind of project management app. You need something to help you.
Right, you've identified that problem.
Exactly.
Okay, considered needs, got it. What about unconsidered needs?
So unconsidered needs, those are the issues that the client may not have even identified yet, but they can have a huge impact on their business or their life.
Ooh, okay.
So let's go back to that project management app. You might think, oh, I just need a simple to-do list.
Hmm.
But what if the real need, what if the unconsidered need is actually better team collaboration?
Oh, interesting.
You see, that's where it gets a little bit deeper. Or let's say you're a small business owner. You think you need a new website,
Right.
but your unconsidered need might be a comprehensive digital marketing strategy. It's about going beyond that first layer.
I see. So it's like instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the problem,
Exactly.
you're going a layer deeper and figuring out what's actually causing that problem.
You've got it.
Okay. So, as a salesperson then, how do we even begin to uncover those hidden needs for our clients? Because, I mean, sometimes people really just don't know what they don't know.
It's so true. And that's where Lodi brings up this concept of consultative selling. And that's about really shifting your mindset away from just barging in with a prepackaged solution
Yeah.
and instead becoming a curious advisor,
Okay.
asking probing questions to try to understand their business, their goals, inside and out.
So less about pitching a product and more about being a detective.
Yes, exactly. Lodi uses the analogy of peeling back the layers of an onion. So those surface-level questions, they're only going to get you surface-level answers. You need to dig deeper to get to the core of what the client really, truly needs.
Okay, so how do we start peeling back those layers? What kind of questions should we be asking instead of just those surface ones?
What, for example, instead of asking, what systems are you using now? You might try asking, how is your current system affecting your team's ability to grow sales? You see how that goes a little bit deeper.
Right. It's a very different question.
Very different. Or instead of saying, what are your pain points? You might ask, if you could wave a magic wand, what would your ideal solution look like? So you're kind of guiding them to think bigger.
Yeah. You're getting them to think outside of the box.
Exactly.
Mm.
And beyond maybe the limitations of their current situation.
And I bet for our listener, if they were asked that question, if you could wave a magic wand, what would your ideal situation look like? They might realize that what they think they need isn't really what they need. It might be something completely different.
You're so right. It can be a real aha moment for people.
Right.
When you realize, wow, I hadn't thought about it like that before.
I love that.
And discovering those unconsidered needs, that's really how you differentiate yourself as a salesperson and show your value. You're not just selling a product. You're offering a solution that has the potential to really transform their business.
I love that. So it's really taking it up a level from just being a salesperson to becoming a trusted advisor. So it's really fascinating to me how shifting your mindset from selling to understanding opens up all these possibilities, not just for the salesperson, but for the client as well. So we've talked about considered needs, unconsidered needs, and this idea of consultative selling. But how does this actually work in practice? Can you give me a real-world example of how this approach might actually play out?
Sure. Let's say you're a consultant and a potential client comes to you. They want to revamp their employee training program.
Yeah.
And they're convinced they need a new online learning platform. That's their considered need.
Right.
But through a series of really insightful questions, you discover that their real challenge is a lack of employee engagement.
Okay.
And the training materials aren't really the root cause.
So their unconsidered need is how to improve engagement, not necessarily how to deliver information.
Exactly. So instead of just jumping in and saying, okay, here's this great new learning platform that you can use, you actually take a step back.
Yeah.
and you present a more holistic solution
Mm-hmm.
that addresses that underlying problem of engagement.
Oh.
So maybe you suggest a combination of interactive workshops, some team-building exercises, maybe even a mentorship program, all designed to really boost that engagement
Mm.
and foster a culture of continuous learning.
And in that scenario, you've not only addressed the client's true need, but you've also positioned yourself as a strategic partner who really understands their business.
Exactly. And that's the power of consultative selling. You're not just an order taker. You're a problem solver who can guide clients toward the best possible outcome.
That's powerful stuff. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it can be really effective when you do it right.
Yeah, and I think it's something that, I'm sure a lot of salespeople out there think they're already doing,
Yeah.
but are they really going that extra mile?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And, maybe that's something we should explore a little bit further.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious because I think we often jump to solutions before we truly understand the problem.
Oh, for sure.
Like I have a great example of this. This happened to me just the other day. I went to the doctor. I was convinced I had a sinus infection, but it turns out all I needed were new glasses.
Wow.
Because I was so focused on the symptoms, I completely missed the underlying cause.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
We do the same thing in sales all the time. If we only focus on those symptoms, those considered needs, we miss out on the chance to make a real impact.
Totally. So for our listeners out there, how do you start to become more consultative in your approach? Where do you even begin?
Well, the most important thing is to really cultivate a genuine curiosity about your clients and their businesses. Don't just focus on what they say they need. Dig deeper. Try to understand their goals, their challenges, their aspirations. Ask yourself, what's the bigger picture here?
So it's about being a good listener, but also asking those probing questions that we talked about earlier. Do you have any tips for how to craft those questions to really try to get to those hidden needs?
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of asking, what are your biggest pain points?
Mm-hmm.
You might try asking, what are your goals for the next year? What are you hoping to achieve? That gets them thinking bigger, more long-term. Or instead of saying, what are you currently using? Try this. If you could wave a magic wand, what would your ideal solution look like? Right. Again, getting them to think outside the box,
Yeah.
to think beyond their current limitations.
Those are great questions, and I can see how asking those kinds of questions would lead to a much richer conversation. You're not just gathering information, you're almost inviting the client to dream a little.
Yes, exactly.
And as you're listening to their responses, what are some things to pay attention to?
Listen to what they don't say, as much as what they do say.
Yeah.
What are the underlying assumptions that they're making? Are there any potential roadblocks that they haven't considered? You're really reading between the lines, looking for clues that point to those deeper needs.
So you're kind of like a detective, piecing together a puzzle to reveal a picture that the client might not even have seen themselves.
Exactly. That's where you as a consultative salesperson really shine. You become a trusted advisor, guiding your client through uncharted territory and helping them to achieve success that they may not have even thought possible.
I love
It's exciting stuff.
this. All sounds really great, but is this approach actually realistic for every sales situation? I mean, what if you're selling something pretty straightforward?
That's a great question. And, while the depth might vary depending on what you're selling, I think the core principles can still apply. Even with something as simple as, let's say, selling socks, you can still be consultative.
Okay, now I gotta hear this. How do you apply this to selling socks?
Well, instead of just saying, what size do you need?
Mm-hmm.
You could ask them about their lifestyle. What activities will you be doing in these socks? Do you prioritize comfort, performance, style? What are your biggest pet peeves about socks?
Wow. We're doing a deep dive on sock sales today.
I know, right?
But I get your point. Those questions totally change the conversation.
do.
You're not just selling a product anymore. You're helping the customer find the perfect sock
Exactly.
for their needs and preferences.
It's about building a relationship, understanding your customer, and helping them make a decision they feel good about.
So it really goes back to what Lodi said about sales being simple. It's not about tricks. It's not about manipulation. It's about human connection and genuine understanding.
I couldn't agree more. When you strip away all the jargon and the fancy tactics, sales really boils down to connecting with people and helping them solve problems.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've talked about uncovering those hidden needs and how this consultative approach can really change the sales dynamic. But how does this all actually translate into results? How do we close the deal once we've uncovered those unconsidered needs?
That's where it gets really interesting. Once you've built that trust and understanding with the client, Closing the deal actually becomes much more organic. It's less about selling and more about guiding the client toward that solution that best fits their needs.
I see. So you're not pushing a product. You're presenting it as the natural answer to the challenges that you've uncovered together.
Exactly. You're not saying you need to buy this. You're saying, based on everything we've discussed, here how I think we can help you achieve your goals.
It's like you've collaboratively created a roadmap to success, and your product or service is the vehicle that gets them there.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And because you've taken the time to understand their needs, both the considered and the unconsidered, your solution's going to be so much more compelling.
Right, because they're not just buying a product, they're buying a solution to their specific challenges.
Exactly.
So that's what sets those consultative salespeople apart. They're not just order takers, they're problem solvers
Yeah.
who build those lasting relationships and create those win-win outcomes.
And, it's not just about the client either. This approach has so many benefits for the salesperson as well.
Oh, I bet.
When you're genuinely helping people
Mm-hmm.
and solving problems, it brings a much deeper level of fulfillment to your work.
Right, you're not just going through the motions, you're making a real impact.
Exactly. And that leads to greater job satisfaction, more repeat business, and ultimately a much more successful and rewarding career.
That's fantastic.
It really is a win-win for everyone involved.
So this has been incredibly insightful, but I want to connect this to the bigger picture now. What are the implications of this approach? Not just for individual salespeople, but for organizations as a whole.
That's a fantastic question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that I think a lot of companies need to be thinking about. Because when organizations embrace a consultative sales approach, it can have a ripple effect
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entire company.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's talk about that. How does this approach impact company culture and their overall business strategy?
Well, first and foremost, it really fosters a culture of customer centricity. When everyone in the organization understands that sales is about helping customers, the focus really shifts from just making a sale to
Yeah.
building those long-term relationships.
Right, so it's not just the sales team. It's everyone from marketing to product development to customer service.
Yeah.
Embodying this customer-centric mindset.
Everyone needs to be thinking about how they can contribute to creating value for the customer. It's a holistic approach.
Yeah.
This should be reflected in everything the company does.
And I can imagine that creates a much more positive and collaborative work environment. When everybody's aligned around this common goal of helping customers, it breaks down those silos.
For sure.
And creates a sense of shared purpose.
Absolutely. And there's even more. A consultative sales approach can also really drive innovation and product development.
Oh, how so?
Because when you're constantly gathering insights about your customers' needs, you're in a much better position to develop products and services that truly meet those needs.
So it's not just about selling what you have, it's about constantly evolving
Yeah.
and adapting to what your customers want.
Exactly. It's a continuous feedback loop. That ensures your offerings are always relevant and valuable. And that, in turn, leads to greater customer satisfaction,
Yeah.
loyalty, and ultimately increased revenue.
That's amazing how one simple shift in mindset from selling to helping can have such a profound impact on an entire organization.
It truly is remarkable.
Right.
And what I think is really fascinating is this approach isn't just good for business. It's good for society as a whole.
Oh, interesting. Okay, tell me more about that. How does it connect to the bigger picture?
Well, when businesses are genuinely focused on helping people solve problems, it creates a much more ethical and sustainable way of doing business. It's about creating those win-win outcomes where both the business and the customer benefit.
So we're moving away from that old school transactional way of doing business to a more collaborative and values-driven approach.
Exactly. It's about building trust, fostering transparency, and creating long-term value for all stakeholders.
I like that.
And I think that's something that we can all get behind, regardless of our role or our industry.
Absolutely. It's about creating a world where businesses aren't just these profit-driven machines, but they're actually forces for good that contribute to a better society.
I love that. That's a future that I'm really excited to be a part of.
Me too. It's inspiring to think about how something as seemingly simple as changing our approach to sales can have such a ripple effect, not just in our own businesses, but in the world around us.
It's powerful stuff.
I think so. Well, this has been great. We've covered a lot of ground today, from considered and unconsidered needs to the power of consultative selling. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. What does this all mean for you in your day-to-day life? What's the one thing you can take away from this deep dive and apply to your own work?
I think the key takeaway here is No matter what you're selling, whether it's a product, a service, an idea, or even yourself in a job interview, success really hinges on truly understanding the needs of the person or people that you're trying to connect with.
So it's about going beyond that surface level of what do you want and digging deeper into the why behind it.
Exactly. It's about being curious, asking those thoughtful questions, and actively listening to the answers. It's about stepping into their shoes, trying to understand their motivations, their challenges, and what they're hoping to achieve.
Because when you truly understand their needs, both the ones that they've voiced
Mhm.
and the ones that they might not even be aware of, you're in a much better position to offer them a solution that truly resonates.
And that solution might not be what you initially expected. It might require you to be flexible, to think outside the box, and to tailor your approach to their specific situation.
But that's where the magic happens, right?
Exactly.
When you can go beyond the script, beyond the elevator pitch, and really connect with someone on a human level, that's when you can create those win-win outcomes.
And I think that's the heart of what Lodi is trying to convey in his article. Sales at its core is not about manipulation or slick sales tactics. It's about understanding, empathy, and genuine human connection.
It's about building relationships,
Yeah,
solving problems, and making a positive impact, one conversation at a time.
I love that.
So as we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. What resonated with you most from this conversation? What are your biggest takeaways?
We're always eager to hear your thoughts and questions. What unconsidered needs might you have that we can help you uncover?
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, keep asking those probing questions, keep peeling back those layers, and keep striving to make a positive impact.